Yeah, hi, good afternoon, and it's great to be here. And it's even better because I get a chance and opportunity to be in conversation with Neha Dixit. Uh, I'll start with an admission. The Many Lives of Syeda X was one of the most engaging books that I've read this year. So many congratulations, it's a fantastic book. And what really impressed me most, because I have been a lifelong reporter, essentially, and her rigorous reportage, like kept going back to the subject again and again. So it's been a fascinating book. When I started, I remember I didn't have too much of expectations, but maybe 20, 25 pages into the book, and I was really, really floored and absolutely addicted. So many congratulations once again. So uh, normally, what is very admirable about this book is that your protagonist is a very ordinary citizen, steeped in ordinariness. But then this is an extraordinary narration of an ordinary person. So, how did you get this idea and when did you start?
Thank you, Ruben. What a privilege to speak to you today. Uh, the book, like we've been talking about media since yesterday. The book started with the idea that I was working essentially in a television news channel. And one day we were told that a big corporate group has bought 37% shares in this news organization that I was working for. So we were told that from now on, our target audience is going to be the urban rich. And the prototype for that is going to be a 35-year-old techie sitting in Bangalore. So when he comes back home in the evening, he should switch to this news channel, which means that the branding of the show, whatever is going in the bulletin, everything should be according to his liking. And then the editor turned towards us because I was in the investigations team. So we were told that you guys stop doing these bleeding heart jhola wala stories and please do stories and investigations on the urban rich people, and which means that which means do investigations on who are the rich kids racing fast cars in South Delhi. And by the end of this discussion, I asked, they said, because the editor kept saying he should like it, the 35-year-old main techie should like it. So I said, is there a she? To which the editor said that scientific research suggests that women do not watch television news, so there is no she. So this was also a time in 2012 when the anti-rape movement started. So for a lot of reporters like me, earlier when we would pitch a story on sexual violence, there was a sense of dismissiveness. But now after 2012, there was possibility of doing stories on sexual violence. And that's when I also started doing many stories. But one of the stories I did was on the Muzaffarnagar riots in 2013 in North India. This was just before the 2014 elections, where almost 100,000 people were displaced and almost 100 cases of sexual violence. And I'd written about that. And what kind of was shocking to me was the women who had actually, out of those hundreds of cases, only 7 women had gone ahead and filed cases. But those 7 women, after filing cases in the court, had to go back and work in the fields of the same people who were accused in that case and basically had perpetrated that violence. So essentially, these were farm workers. So I realized my reporting was also very episodic in nature when I was writing about gender and sexual violence. So with this book, I born out of that frustration where you're told, okay, only urban rich stories, and the other bit about only very episodic silos that we create, I started visiting certain working class neighborhoods in Delhi. And unlike Kolkata and Bombay, Delhi has a huge huge number of small industrial units. In Kolkata and Bombay, you have bigger ones, but because Delhi was the power capital, from the master plan, it was ruled out. And I read about a strike by the almond workers in Karaval Nagar in 2009, where actually their strike, led by women, for the first time managed to raise the global rates for almond. And so that's when I met Syeda. And Syeda, essentially, when I started meeting her in 2014, one realized that a lot of things that she was talking about, the fact that she was a weaver in Banaras and her loom was burned down after the Babri Masjid demolition, that's when she had to move to Delhi with her family and her 3 children. And in the next 30 years, she did 50 jobs, never managing to make more than 1/5 of the daily wage in spite of working for 12 to 16 hours. So that's how the book started.
Okay, so that essentially means that you worked on the book for 9 years. So that was 9 years of reportage. That's phenomenal, because that we in the newsrooms now realize that reporting is discouraged essentially. But anyway, so how did you zero in on this particular character, Syeda? Why?
So initially, I was talking to a number of women in Karaval Nagar, because basically, apart from like cleaning the almond, so the almond workers are mostly women, and a lot of people like Syeda who I met were essentially technically called home-based workers, who are basically piece rate workers. So the number of things that you make, so per 12 dozen things that you make is how you are paid. So Syeda and many other women I was speaking to were used to make helmet parts, cycle brake wires, pressure cooker parts, election campaign material, all the festival goodies. So every possible thing that we use, they were meeting. And initially, my book proposal was about speaking to several women. But in the next 3-4 years, when I started talking to people, I realized that Syeda was more open to telling me about what is happening, and little uninhibited. In the way, there's another person in the book called Lalita, and Lalita is from the Musahar community in Bihar, and in the 90s when there was a lot of violence by the Ranveer Sena, which was an upper caste militia, that's when she had to run and come to Delhi. And so Lalita also wanted to talk. But one realized that with the women, once you start talking, when I was meeting them, and you ask them, do you work? And they say, no, we don't. And then you say, no, but you are stitching these footballs that are going to the World Cup and whatever. And then they say, no, this is just to buy milk for today, or to buy, to pay for children's tuition. So the acknowledgement that you are a worker, or the acknowledgement that you deserve better wages, that was mostly not there for most of the women. But Syeda was more outspoken. And then when she started talking about and her children and her daughter, I realized this is more in parallel with what has happened in the last 30 years of India's socio-political timeline.
Your book has definitely left a lasting impression on me, because having read your book, whenever I get caught up in a Delhi traffic jam, and I see those kids and women selling those, from maybe a pen to a balloon to a national tricolor, I'm reminded of Syeda and Lalita and Akmal. But why this title, Syeda X?
So it's called Syeda X because we realized that this is not just one Syeda whose story is like this.
So you mean there could be millions, hundreds of thousands of Syedas?
Yes, the same story, the same template can be replicated in the lives of many other women that we see. And if you see, like the first and the only time Indian government acknowledged the existence of home-based workers was in 2008. In spite of the fact that in India, most of the women are employed in the agricultural sector, but after that, it's the piece rate work that most of the women do. So last time in 2008, the number was 80 million. But since then, there has been no sort of comprehensive study to find out the numbers. And which is why every year when we have this data where they say, female labor force participation, that rate is going down. And you realize, wherever I see women are working. So how is this not taking into account? And and the huge gap is not taking into account these home-based workers.
If you guys haven't read this book, I would very strongly recommend to pick up this book and read, because what Neha does is she rescues, as Pratap Bhanu Mehta in his blurb says, that Neha Dixit rescues the invisible lives. Like people who are absolutely invisible, we don't seem to notice them, though they are all around us, particularly in a city like Delhi. Would you like to describe the life of a Syeda, like low income, woman employee, worker? What would be the life like?
So Syeda, like I said, every day she works for 12 to 16 hours, and that's most of the women one is talking about. Most of the time assisted by one more family member, which is always the daughter, because the daughter is always roped into work, in this case, Reshma. and never making more than 1/5 of the daily wage, which means that she's packaging almonds, which is a 23 kg bag, and getting 60 rupees. Or if she's packaging Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan bags and stitching them, again she's getting 60 rupees. So this is the kind of work that she does. But if you want, I can read one bit that tells us more about
Please do.
her life. I'm reading from chapter 4. It's called Doorknob. एक और आ गई आकाश नापने. One more has arrived to measure the sky. One more woman has come to measure the immeasurable. When Syeda moved to Karaval Nagar, Roopmati said this about her. A few years later, Syeda repeated this for Seema, who then said the same for Khushbu. No one remembers the source of this adage, but it continues to be said for every new migrant woman who joins the workforce in Karaval Nagar. Astronomers measure the sky in degrees, minutes, and seconds to confirm if a star has moved closer to the moon. The women workers of Karaval Nagar count the pieces, the dozens, the kilos of things they prepare to measure how close they are to survival. Things that are necessary for a common person's survival. Food, snacks, spices, cosmetics, stationery, garments, automobile parts, books, prints, spare parts, decoration pieces, toys, kitchen appliances, hardware, carpentry tool, plumbing material, building material, devotional items, festival goodies, medical supplies, electric goods, electronic goods. Everything is made and packaged here by women on a per-piece basis. Over the next few months, Syeda made wooden, metal, and plastic photo frames and was paid rupees 70 for 144 pieces. She then made door hangings, bouquet of plastic flowers made with discarded bulbs for rupees 60 for 144 pieces. She picked up thread and needlework too. She stuffed soft toys with fiber or cloth scraps and stitched them up for rupees 1 per piece. She stitched cloth bags for 50 paise per piece on a sewing machine. She embroidered saris for rupees 5 per piece and motifs on garments for rupees 30 for 144 pieces. She finished and packaged school bags for rupees 60 for 144 pieces. Using wires and beads, she made jewelry for rupees 50 per 144 earrings. She assembled plastic guns with springs for rupees 25 per 1,000 pieces. No one knew who decided these abysmal rates for working on these products, but there was no option but to do it. If you didn't, there would be many others who would. Over time, she put together a toolbox, which she fondly called her Jadu Ka Pitara, treasure trove. Reshma, her daughter, later started referring to it as her CV, the only comprehensive testament to the variety of jobs she had done for years.
Yeah, great. But then this book isn't only the story of women, like even you talk about, and very evocatively, Reshma's husband. If I am not mistaken, his name was Akmal, and he was a weaver in Uttar Pradesh, had skills. Then he had to flee his state, lands up in Delhi. So this book talks about Akmal, their 2 sons, and what kind of life, like they are no better than the woman, right?
Akmal, so Reshma's husband Akmal was a master weaver, and he was very also whimsical, and so Syeda says that he was manmoji, whimsical, with something that women are not allowed to be. So Akmal would decide, he was so particular that he used to weave a particular kind of Banarsi sari, and the yarns also is what he would dye himself. He was that particular. And after the Babri Masjid demolition, when the loom was burned down in this place called Lota and he was affected, is when he was picked up by the police and detained. And of course, there was police torture in the custody, and he was there for months. But once he was released, he found it hard to get back to any kind of work, which meant that when he came to Delhi in 1995, since then, first he worked as a porter, and then since he's been working as a rickshaw puller in a factory. So being reduced from an extremely whimsical but genius weaver to a porter and then a rickshaw puller, so eventually he becomes an alcoholic. And so there are huge questions of masculinity that need to be addressed, because alcoholism is also linked to what you're supposed to be. So he is never able to be the primary breadwinner. And at one point, he does become one for a few months, and he wants to be treated like this person. And so he keeps telling Syeda, why don't you like dress up and serve me food and whatever? But he's not able to hold on to it. And both Syeda's sons, Shahzeb and Salman. Shahzeb is the elder son, and he ends up becoming a bike mechanic. But at the same time, because Shahzeb is the elder son, he's carrying all the load of the family to, share the trauma and the grief of the mother. And Salman also, so both of them don't look up to their father so much. Salman, on the other hand, the younger son, was actually named after Salman Khan. So he wants to be this Salman Khan and this really masculine guy, but he's never able to like pull it off. So there's an incident that they had told me where Salman was in school, and in 2002 there were all these CDs that were circulated of the train in Gujarat in 2002 riots, and it was also shown at his school. And so somebody walks up to him and says, "Arey Salman, why did you set the train on fire? Tune train mein aag kyun lagai?" And Salman, because he wants to be like the school guy, he says, "Ha, lagai," without knowing the context in which this conversation is happening. And of course, he's beaten up. Shahzeb, on the other hand, it's very interesting because Reshma, Syeda's daughter, was very upset with me, saying, "Oh, you are in awe of my mother. I'll tell you how patriarchal and how irritating she is." Because Syeda always had this like a soft corner for her sons and more partial. And so at one point, Shahzeb is in love with a Hindu girl. And I didn't know about it because since 2014 I started meeting Syeda. In 2018 only I found out that she has one more son. And I asked her what happened, and she said, he fell in love with a woman who had done black magic on her. So I was like, what is this? What is the story? And then I realized he was in love with a Hindu girl and they had to run away. And full like love jihad propaganda theory was floated and said this, so they had to run away. But Syeda could never come to terms with the fact that her son chose this person instead of her. And Salman also, on the other hand, trying to be this guy, but never ever having the resources or the environment or the infrastructure to be able to be the school guy, and then eventually ends up doing the social service in a lot of madrasas. So there are these. Every once in a while, they're expected to be this strong male primary breadwinner, but there are these situations where the police keeps coming and keep detaining. There's another bit about Shahzeb, because once I found out that this whole love jihad thing had happened, I said, okay, I have to go back and write about it. And then few months later, Syeda told me that when 2010, when some Indian Mujahideen people were picked up from Kurawal Nagar, Shahzeb was also picked up. And then one realized that these are the people who were constantly picked up by police each time there was some sort of suspicion or case in the area. And to the point, somebody says in the book that Delhi police would particularly come and look for migrant men, because the moment you look for migrant men and pick up, they don't have family members to come to the police station and make an inquiry and get them released. And so Delhi becomes a place where young men from UP and Bihar come and they disappear because you can't. So all of these things are happening.
You have written so evocatively about Syeda. I'm curious. Is she aware that she is now being immortalized in a book? Will she ever get to read the book? What is it?
So Syeda knows about the book, and I had also shown it to her. When I was working on this, it was really nice because when I used to go around and she was showing me some factories where she worked, and some women asked me, who is this person going with her? She said, this person, she's writing a book on me, like, so with so much pride. But the other women were like, why are you writing a book on her? So it was strange. But, and the other gaze thing was also interesting, because I was thinking, I'm documenting the lives of lots of women workers. But the women were also saying this about me. One of them pointed at me and said, see, poor thing, she has to roam around in so many places for her work. So it was very interesting that they had this take on me. And when the book came out, Syeda was like, why have you made like another screwdriver or something? Because Syeda is like, her life is life decisions have been taken on what Bollywood incidents have happened in parallel. Like, she decided that she's only going to marry a person who's interested in films, and that is the point where she'd seen Tezab and Madhuri Dixit and 1, 2, 3. So Akmal thankfully was interested in films, or the sons being named after that. So she thought it's going to be a really colorful and nice book. So she's seen it, but she was kind of like, okay. So the Hindi translation is going to come out in April, I think. Let's see, because she is literate, so she can read.
And so she will get to read the Hindi version. Yeah. I was speaking to someone a little while ago, and that person has also read your book. And this is not to doubt your integrity, but that person just asked, like, so much happened in the life of Syeda. Is she for real or is she imaginary? Because all that can go wrong has gone wrong with this person. So, is it just pure coincidence or pure bad luck? What is it?
No, actually it's not. I would say that, again, you know, a lot of times, see, there's a documentation of what happens high above and documentation of lives on the ground. And so there is always, and in the book, which is why if you see a lot of times I've mentioned, okay, that Chandrayaan has been launched, but this is actually happening in people's lives. Or right to education has been passed, which is great. But does it have any impact on Syeda and her children's lives? When we start talking to people, we realize, for example, let me explain with an example. Syeda used to work, at one point she said, I used to roll agarbattis, which are incense sticks. And I started asking her, what are these incense sticks? And she was really irritated with me because she said, I am telling you about weaving, Banarsi weaving, and you want to know about rolling incense sticks? Like, you have no whatever thing about work and skill and stuff. And then I said, can you show me the packet? And she showed me one picture of, which is called Nandini Agarbatti, and Nandini was a picture of a cow, and the horns had some gold ornaments on it. And then I got curious and I realized, what is it? And I realized this is a cow urine product factory where she was working. And she was rolling agarbattis. Even Syeda didn't notice that this is what is happening, and the larger politics around cow urine and Hindu supremacists and what all is happening, where you're being told that put like few drops of cow urine in your nostrils and you won't have cold or whatever, all those things we've heard of. And she was working in this cow urine factory, and nobody was bothered which religion was she from. So these are things that may happen and may make the news and may think that, oh, it has something to do with the larger picture. But people on the ground do get affected by those policies in different ways. So which is why the fact that Salman used to work for a travel company where one person who used to run it was threatened by cow protection units saying that, why are you doing this? And in spite of the fact that this travel company would take all kinds of products, they were targeted because they were Muslim. And in this context, there are things that affect people on the basis of their identity, whether it's religious identity, caste identity, class identity, or gender identity.
Syeda and her family seem to have been distinctly unlucky. Like this Hindu-Muslim divide, majoritarianism that we are seeing. Like this particular family seems to have been caught up in almost everything. Babri Masjid, it upended their lives. They had to leave their home state, Uttar Pradesh. Then just when they were about to rebuild in whatever way their life, then I think Godra happened, right? So again, like I think one of the son got arrested, this and that. So how is this Hindu-Muslim divide? And one of her sons actually so-called quote-unquote love jihad, fell in love with a Hindu girl and had to run away. And has she come back? Has he come back so far or any? Okay. So how has it affected people like Syeda, like this? How is it playing out on their lives?
So first of all, I love to say this, which is I think love jihad is the best example of mansplaining, which is basically, what are you saying? You're saying that you show a woman a pair of jeans and a phone and a bike and sunglasses, and they immediately, their brains are turned off and they run away with whoever they want. Basically, that's the theory. So here, like you're saying, that Syeda, she told me that there are a couple of aspects to it. She said that before the Babri Masjid demolition, she had experienced hunger, poverty, lack of things at home, and lack of resources. But the first time she felt targeted on the basis of her identity and in religious identity, and in spite of that, she carried on and took up whatever work was coming her way. But every once in a while, her life was sort of affected because of this, in spite of the fact that she is not involved in these larger conversations at all. Like you said, the fact that Shahzeb was in love with this woman, it was as simple as that. Even Syeda is not like, very, and this is why I keep telling everybody that we have to go and talk to our families, and the first test is just to tell them that I'm going to choose my own partner, and then let's see their reaction to it. That's the first test of any sort of progressive value. And so here also Syeda is like, so the Hindu supremacists would like to believe that this is some theory and some plan or action, but here is the mother saying she has done some black magic on my son. So it's really like deep down patriarchy and many other layers that are at work. Or the fact that Syeda again was affected in the Delhi 2020 riots. Her house was burned down in Karawal Nagar. And that was also because she's a Muslim. And I have actually once had a conversation with Syeda where I asked her, what do you think about what is happening to you on the basis of your religious identity? And she said one thing, which is that I don't wake up every morning to think how to defeat the Hindu supremacists. I think about how to survive that day. And that to me was so eye-opening, because I realized that the conversation around pluralism cannot be complete till we marry it with the questions of caste, class, and gender hierarchies. Because if a person is all the time occupied in surviving that day, how do you expect that person to be part of the larger kind of fight against supremacists or against authoritarian people? And so that was something that kept coming back to her.
So you have done such a great job in this book that Syeda, we start empathizing with her. Despite her ordinariness, she assumes a kind of a larger than life presence in the book. But then I guess she would have had her share of follies, right?
Like all of us too. Like I said, this again, Reshma, her daughter, like I said earlier, that Reshma, initially when I used to go in these 9 years and meet Syeda, Reshma would keep her distance from me, and then one day she said, oh, you are in awe of my mother, let me tell you how she's like. And then she said, she used to keep every birthday, for my brother she would buy a cake, for me she would make halwa. And I was the one who would keep assisting her in every possible work that she used to do. So each time she had to do something, she would say, oh, finish the packaging of the chess and ludo pieces, finish the carom painting of the carom pieces, all of those things. Not once did she ever acknowledge that I am the one who was helping her, or the fact that I am the only one. My brothers did not complete school, I am the one who completed school, but she could never sort of hold out that space for me to be able to say, listen, I am tired. Or the fact that when demonetization happened, it affected a lot of home-based workers, because it's essentially a cash-driven economy. And at that point, Syeda was pasting bindis, she was doing bindi pasting work. So each of the bindis that you see on the packets, they're individually pasted. And that's how you're paid for 144 packets that you paste. And so work was less. People were actually cooking only once a day to save on fuel. There was not enough money. But it was Reshma who then stepped in, because she was the only one who had a bank account. And so all these other big factory owners, they wanted somebody to be able to change their cash. So Reshma said, okay, I am going to do it, but for every 1,000 rupees, I'm going to charge $100. And that's how I kept the house running. Or even now, for the fact that the other bit which I'll link with Reshma's story is that Syeda also has stereotypes about other Muslims. So for the fact that when the Muzaffarnagar riots happened, because this area, northeast Delhi, borders UP. So when the riots happened, a lot of people fled Shamli in Muzaffarnagar in West UP and came to this side, which is Ghaziabad, which is borders Delhi. And Syeda has all these stereotypes about these Muzaffarnagar riot-affected people saying, "Arey, these people, they are coming with their almirahs and their boxes and their TVs. Why do they need relief material? We need relief material." Or she also has these ideas about Rohingya Muslims because the Rohingya settlement is there. Or the fact that Reshma starts liking this guy, Gigi, who's Bengali Muslim, and Syeda again has these problems that, oh, these people, they eat fish and have mustard oil and whatever, so I don't know why my daughter is hanging out with them. So Syeda also has these complexities. She's also patriarchal. Or the fact that even with sexual harassment, she does not have a very politically correct response to it. I mean, if she, a lot of people are going to cancel her if she says, when I asked her about this, she said that it depends on the woman. And so we would actually cancel people if they say it publicly, but we have to realize if the choice that day is to be able to buy vegetables for your children and food for your children that day, or to speak up, that is the choice people are going to make. So the possibility who can afford to have a politically correct position is something that also I started thinking about. So
I think political correctness does not come naturally to her, given her situation, and she's far from perfect. But what is the role that the state plays in making their life more miserable, more imperfect? Like I remember distinctly you talking about tullahs. I like that. Tullahs are those cops, Delhi cops, I guess, who goes and extorts. So
actually, the state, in many ways, that's why in the book also I have not got people from the state to talk about what is happening in Syeda's life, because they are essentially absent. And the only people who are there are sort of irritants in many ways and causing problems. Like, I'll give you one example. Each time you go and talk to people like Syeda and many workers, they would say that I go to the factory. Factory is essentially like a small room in a subcontractor's house, where home-based workers sometimes come to collect the raw material or give the final product and work. When you talk to the activists, they call it sweatshop. So now, but Syeda is very irritated. She does not like activists because she says that what do these guys come and do? The only thing they come and do is, they call the labor inspector. The labor instructor says, oh, this almond factory is very bad for your lungs, whatever. They shut it down. They seal all these places and they go away. And she really does not like it not being called factory, because for her, this is the factory where she goes, she works, she spends 12 hours. Or the fact that the state, like I said, the police, every once in a while, coming and picking up migrant young men from these areas, and that's why saying Delhi becoming a city where young people from Bihar and UP come and disappear. The fact that Salman, who was quote-unquote a history sheeter, every once in a while when there was some sort of theft, some sort of crime, he was picked up regularly to the point that he had to drop out from school. Or the same thing that applies to Akmal, because he was absent-minded, manmoji, whimsical weaver, and when the riots broke out after the Babri Masjid demolition, he was basically hanging around a dargah, which was destroyed in the riots. And he just ran when the police started chasing him mindlessly. And then he was picked up, detained, and tortured, and was never able to go back to work. So the state is always, that's where the class bit also comes in, that how easy it is to actually penalize or incarcerate people who have no protection of any sort or no mechanism to rescue themselves for what is happening. Or even in terms of wages, right? We are living in times when labor is not essentially an issue for most of our governments. UP government suspended labor rights for 3 years during COVID, and it was not a national issue. And how can you do that? Which means that you can be hired, fired, made to work for 16, 18 hours, and you have no rights. So in that context, the state is pretty much an irritant rather than facilitating anything in our life. Or the people, even in, we talk about digital India, for example. So Reshma used to work in a mall. She used to work as a bathroom attendant, and she was getting 9,000 rupees per month. And she realized this was around the time of demonetization, where people were, at home they were struggling, but here in the mall people were coming and spending money, and she was she told me one thing, and I've started doing that as a practice, is that basically we have to find out if the malls have any canteens for workers. Because if the mall workers do not get food from home, they have to buy that 60 rupee burger because they're not allowed to step out during work hours from the mall, which means either you go hungry or you spend that much money from that small salary that you're getting. And later on, she started working as working at a digital seva kendra. So these kendras are because digital India, so everything is online. Most people do not have resources. So she used to enroll for people's Aadhaar cards, pension, travel tickets, insurance, everything. And this is a common thing which everybody has spoken about. Basically, a lot of workers, when they go to the PDS shop to buy ration, to get ration, you have to give your Aadhaar details, and you have to give your fingerprints. A lot of people who do hard labor, their fingerprints go away, which means you are denied that, and the only way to get that is that they're going to send an OTP to a phone number that you registered 10 years back when you got your Aadhaar made, and most of the women do not have phones, which means you're denied ration. So there are all these things that are happening. The state is thinking that it's fixing things for people's lives, but it's actually just making it complicated for people on the ground.
So Syeda's story is essentially the India story, right?
I would say so, yes.
So there is this whole huge section of people living right under our nose, and we don't even notice them. And they are in a terrible, terrible state. Even Syeda's daughter, she ends up working, as you said, as a bathroom attendant, and sad. So do you think that there is any future left for these kind of people, like for Syeda, like in a country where the rich are getting richer and the poor getting more marginalized? What kind of future do you envision for, say, someone like Syeda?
See, I would say that I am not, because Syeda is hopeful, I am hopeful. Because she carries on. After she was affected in the riots, she started working in Tronika City, which is again an industrial unit near Ghaziabad, where she used to work in a wedding card factory and make wedding cards and package them. So people are carrying on, and people have the will to carry on. But I would say that the decision makers, people who make policies, people who have the power are not interested in fixing things for people on the ground who are affected on a daily basis. In spite of that, there is hope. I see a Reshma. Reshma is far more vocal. Reshma has far more nuanced ideas about the world than Syeda. So I do see hope in Reshma and many people like her. And yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But how do they break away from this? They are virtually under a kind of a siege where they cannot really dictate. So how do they break away out of this?
I think there is no option to break away. The option is to be able to find tools to survive in this system where nobody is watching your back but yourself or the people around you. For example, Syeda relies heavily on the friendships that she made. There's a person that she is very fond of, who's called Nisha Radiowali in the book. Nisha Radiowali, she's called Radiowali because in the 70s, when a lot of electronics companies were set up in Noida, they used to look for young girls, adolescent girls, with nimble fingers to be able to make TV antennas and optical instruments and stuff like that. So she used to work there, and later on, Nisha moved to Karaval Nagar. She was a single woman, she had more money. And she provides the space for a lot of women workers to come and hang out. So basically, they just come and hang out and say, I've just come here to sleep for 20 minutes because when you try to take a nap at home, they keep asking, what is this and where is this? And you can't do that. And that becomes a place where all of them start talking to each other. So even this, she says, Syeda says that they are almost like Orni Badal sisters, which means that friends so close that you can exchange clothes and you can wear each other's clothes. So that is, and when the Delhi riots happened, she actually went away to Muradabad to live with Nisha Radiowali for once. So it's the relationships and the friendships that you make which become your support system and not the state.
So your book apparently is doing well. It's got critical acclaim, but I guess the story hasn't ended. So would there be a sequel? Because I would still be interested 10 years from now, like whether Syeda survives, what happens to Akmal, what happens to the son who had to run away after marrying a Hindu girl. I would like to know. So could there be a sequel?
I didn't think about it till this point, but now that you're saying it, I must do something. Maybe I should just write about Reshma now.
Okay. And what about this book? Like it's coming out in other languages?
Yes, there'll be a Hindi translation coming out in April. A Malayalam translation will be out. Telugu and Marathi is also going to be out. So
okay,
so
wonderful.
far,
So should we take some questions? Any questions?
So you talked about what's in the book. I would like to ask you what happened after the book was published. I've seen some of the comments people have left. One of them is why a woman's story, and the other is why a Muslim story, and why are you making this the story of India, and is it the story of India? And I would like to hear you talk about that.
So to them, I just say, why not a woman's story? Because don't we call like every other thing that is written, we never say that's a man's story, do we say that? But if the person being written about as a woman, suddenly everybody is offended. So so yeah, so they can just deal with it. But also the fact that, you know, there are all these things about urban poverty. There is this stuff about caste, class, gender, all the socio-economic policies that have come in, or in the last 30 years when majoritarianism started increasing and growing, and in the 90s this was also the time when the markets opened up, so it had huge impact on a lot of people doing small the handloom work, the other workers. Now we see everything is moving towards gig economy. Anybody we meet is doing 2 to 3 jobs, doing delivery from the apps, or doing some other work in the morning and doing some other work in the evening. So these are all things that are linked, and that is how they impact somebody's life on the ground. Or the fact that even a health story, for example, recently there was a report that if a person like Syeda falls sick for a week, it immediately brings her into the acute poverty category. So these are the things that are, if we don't look at them together, I don't think they will be, we'll be able to make sense of how we reached here. And so, which is why I do think that at least, and I'm not saying this is the only one, there are many other things that are getting written, but through Syeda, at least for me, I understood it, and it makes sense to me that why the India that I'm living in right now, which is divided in many, many ways, and it also is very elite in its conversations, why have we reached at this point?
Sir, go ahead. No, I just wanted to, this is something which has been troubling me for a long time. We have Syedas in India since 1947. And what I have seen personally from, Kerala is relatively more educated. Still, people don't think about the larger picture when they start fighting. They only fight for their requirements. So basically it reflects in our political choices also. So doesn't that help the kind of, upper class majoritarian governments that we have? I'm not talking only about Hindutva and Muslims in general.
If I'm getting your question correctly, let me give you an example. Initially, when I used to go to Karaval Nagar to report, I would see that every evening people would just do some tadka in oil and make potato curry and have it with rice or roti. In the last 4-5 years post-COVID, I've seen that people just do tadka in water, and when they give that potato curry to their children in that katori, in that bowl, they put 3-4 drops of oil. That's because the edible oil is so expensive that they can't afford to have it in their meal every day. And I really, really feel that these conversations, if they're not married with the larger conversations about progressive values and pluralism, we are really not including everybody else. So that's where, or the fact that we saw farmers protest, right? The fact that it was driven by a huge section that was not part of the elite conversations, but they actually also won that movement. These conversations have to come together, otherwise, like you said very correctly, it will only be conversations about better India, progressive India will only be in a very Brahminical world with upper caste, privileged people of class having those conversations and feeling happy about doing something, which is not really translating on the ground.
Any more questions, please? Anyway, one question from another question. I just got reminded. Like in your book, you say like when you were reporting on this, like you used to get a lot of threatening calls. So have they stopped or have they multiplied? Or they haven't bothered to read the book? That's very likely. Right?
Yeah, while working on the book, I was being physically stalked.
And why was it? Like I found it like...
Actually, it was very strange and we also tried to make sense of it. I used to get, I got phone calls for 5 months saying that you report about this and that and we'll come and throw acid on you and you're sitting in your balcony and we'll gang rape you and you've bought these vegetables in the market and we're going to throw acid, to the point that they finally tried to break into my house that day after the threat in January 2021. And I kept thinking, I hadn't even published any story in those months when this was happening. And I realized I was actually visiting Karawal Nagar quite a bit because the Delhi riots had happened. So whoever was threatening and stalking me I was anticipating whatever I was writing, or I don't know. But once that happened, I've mentioned this in the book also, I told Syeda about this and she had a response which was kind of very humbling in many ways. She said that elephants keep walking and dogs keep barking. So it was her way of coping with this and for me. But no, so far I have not got anything because I don't think they're going to end up reading till chapter 5. So I'm pretty safe that way, that they don't read books.
I can't resist asking you this because I have been a journalist lifelong, and so which is now that you have become an author, this is your first book, right? Which is a better space, being a journalist or an author?
Anyway, I don't get any work. Don't make me say this. I would like to do both maybe.
No, but then you talked about, like in your last job, your editor telling you that don't get into this Jholawala type stories. But then that was always the case. Even 30 years ago when I was a cub reporter and I was reporting out of a very poor state, and I would end up every second issue, I would end up writing about Kalahandi, poverty, malnutrition. My bosses would say, these are not sexy stories. Okay, so I think it's become more prominent now, but it was always the case. So what would be your next book? Have you started thinking?
I don't want to say it, but I think what I definitely want to do is like a
sequel now.
No, in-depth profile of Rakhi Sawant. That's my dream story. That's what I want to do. So maybe that. But responding to what you're saying, actually with journalism it's become very difficult. For somebody like me, I mostly do ground reports, and it's very difficult to get anything long form, deep, published as a ground report, because even the progressive news organizations essentially want you to write an opinion piece about things, and now everybody wants you to be an influencer, so put out your workout videos and put your article link on the site. So I don't have the skills to do that. So maybe I'll write books or find whichever possibilities
I think writing a book gives you more editorial freedom. You can get across your point of view, and at least I feel a lot freer. So, would you like to read another part of your book? Because if any more questions? Okay, he has a question.
Hi.
I guess we have another 5 minutes or so. Yeah.
I'll make it quick. So, Neha, you've done like over the years so many great reports from all over the country, like the Northeast, Muzaffarnagar, places like that. How did you come to this story and see, okay, now this is a book-length narrative. This is something that I can expand into a full, a full story with, like beginning, middle, end, all of that, which you didn't see in other stories that you've done over the years. What was the difference?
I think a lot of my reporting trained me to understand things. Like I mentioned that with the Muzaffarnagar reporting, I realized I'm only I'm only looking at women as sexual violence survivors, but these are farm workers. Some other story that I had done where I'd met a woman, an Adivasi woman in Mirzapur. She used to work in a stone quarry, and she had faced sexual violence, and because of that she was pregnant, but she couldn't take a day off to get an abortion conducted. Or the fact that I met another Dalit rape survivors, because I was doing a lot of stories on sexual violence, and she was imprisoned. She was imprisoned for 10 days on charges of perjury because she had withdrawn her statement against the accused. But the reason was that the people who had raped her were from the Jat community, and they had issued a diktat that nobody from the Dhanak Dalit community will be given work as farm workers in the lands of the Jat people. So I realized that even whatever I was reporting was like in silos, or even when I was reporting about majoritarianism, this happened, this riot happened, but what happened before or after? So with Syeda, I realized, because I met so many people who had come to Northeast Delhi because of being displaced by some sort of violence, whether these were Muzaffarnagar riot survivors who were living in Loni, which is next to Karawal Nagar, or the Rohingya settlement that is there in Karawal Nagar again. So those things I realized that, okay, this is not, these are far more, all these layers need to be understood together. That's why this book happened, but the non-brainy answer to that is that I started writing long form because I started freelancing, and I realized you're paid per word, so you'll get more money. And with book also I realized, okay, there'll be some more money to write about something in particular and focus on it. So that's how it happened.
In any case, anything is more rewarding than journalism these days. So that's taken. This book was in the works for 9 years. You researched for 9 years, phenomenal. Like, I don't think I can work on a subject for 9 years. So what's your, how long did it actually take to write?
I think for 4 years I just had informal conversations and discussions and asking random questions and irritating everybody around me, because once I was sitting with a notebook and asking Syeda, how many jobs have you done and what were you paid? And she got really irritated and she said that, would you ever ask a construction worker how many houses did he help construct, what were their addresses, what were the names of the owners? So why are you sitting with a pen and whatever talking to me about this? Because I've already done this for 13 hours, now I have to sit with you and talk about the same thing, so I'm not interested. So first 4 years was just putting information together. I realized at one point, for example, there used to be a lot of these film posters in Syeda's house. So there was this Hayabusa bike poster with Salman Khan and all, and that's when I started talking to her. So she said, then she started talking about her interest in films and why she married Akmal, but also she told me about how her father, who because weaving is a traditional family business, her father was not interested in weaving, so he ran away and he joined Gulab Bai's Nautanki and he started working there as a tailor. And how this was never spoken of in the family because there was the stigma against about this conversation that how can you run away and join Nautanki, which is all these sort of connotations. So that came to me, and then like I said with Shahzeb, I did not know till 2018 that he existed. So it's only till after 2018 when I started organizing all the information in a chronological way, and I then started writing. So that's how it happened, yeah.
You have written a great book, but does it disappoint you at some point or the other that nothing is perhaps going to change for the likes of Syeda, right? What changes? You have written a great book, you might pick up a few awards, make money, but then what happens?
I'll give you an example. Syeda was part, like I said, Syeda was part of this almond factory strike in 2009. And to put it simply, they were paid 40 rupees for a 23 kg bag that they would clean. And that cleaning, a lot of us, I didn't know this at least earlier, that full almond seed, you can only get it once the shell is broken manually. If you break it with a machine, then the almond breaks. So that's why all the North American Californian almond, they come to India and many other subcontinent parts. They're broken, they're clean, and they're sent back. And because you have to break it with your hand, which means that you have to dip them in acid and break them. And so there's a joke in Karaval Nagar about the almond factory workers, which is they learn how to eat with spoons, because once you dip it in acid and your fingers are gone, you can't eat with your hand. So in 2009, there was a strike, and the strike lasted for 3 weeks. Everybody, all the women who were sort of cynical about it, they participated. They'd never stepped out, so they were dressing up in their finest clothes. Some of them said, oh, this was almost like a mela, and then there was retaliation against them. But eventually they managed to win, and there was a 10 rupee raise. So to which Reshma, her daughter, was very cynical about it and almost mocking Syeda and saying, so much for a 10 rupee raise. And that's when Syeda said two things. Of course, the fact that 10 rupee raise means that every day I'm making 10 rupees more, which means if 650 rupees for all these days means more grocery for home. But also the fact that for the first time they felt that they demanded for something as women and workers, and something moved. And Lalita and Syeda say that, even at home, when as women we ask for something, we have to repeat it 2,000 times for something to happen. But here in the outside world, we said something, a demand was made, and something moved. And so, which is why Syeda keeps saying that each time her sons Shazib and Salwan were picked up by police, because of the strike, she had the confidence to enter a police station and create a fuss and to get them released. So yes, directly there is no change, but these experiences do sort of manifest themselves in some way and bring some sort of change.
So I think we have how many minutes left? 4 minutes left. If anyone wants to ask any questions, or otherwise you can read another page from your book.
Or we can let them go.
No, but go ahead and read another part. It's a very engaging book. Those who haven't read, I would strongly recommend, please pick up a copy.
I'm reading from chapter 6. It's called Soft Toy. It was a cold grey winter evening in December 2012. Shazib had asked Reshma to buy 24 glass bangles. Reshma took her own sweet time, carefully selecting the color and style from Som Bazaar, the weekly Monday market in Karaval Nagar. She assumed Shazib wanted her help in buying these to gift to a girl and thought he would let her keep at least half for herself. He took them all, which disappointed her. Shazib had dropped out of school after class 9 to supplement the family income. He was 23. Having done odd jobs here and there for 3 or 4 years, he had finally been taken in as an apprentice at Bobby's shocker repair shop. He was tall, lanky, clean-shaven with large toned biceps after years of lifting heavy loads at shops, factories and construction sites. He had slightly long hair and he would wear a hairband both for style and to prevent it from falling on his face. Shocker repair shops are commonplace in India. They're present in almost every nook and corner of northeast Delhi. Potholes, mud lanes, lack of metal roads cause motorcycle shock absorbers to go for a toss. A new shock absorber would cost rupees 2,000 or even more. It was a rolling business in Karaval Nagar. Everyone used bikes in the narrow lanes to carry raw material, finished products, machines, and just to commute. Shazib's friend had already started working in factories as tailor apprentices and construction laborers, or were trying to get into the manufacturing supply chain. Shazib's job was sought after and considered cool. He was a bike mechanic after all. Every day there was a new bike of a new model to repair and ride around Karaval Nagar. Shazib had longed to drive bikes all his life. He grew up watching Akmal drag a cart rickshaw day after day. Akmal, tall yet shriveled, flesh draped around his bones, sunken eyes, with dark circles around them, lips red with pan or gutka. Growing up, the boys often had to help in carrying raw material, pushing the cart rickshaw with all their strength. Oh, the drudgery of it. Of course, riding a bike had much of a psychological as a functional value for most boys, including Shazib. It wasn't just a matter of pleasure. For most, it was a symbol of attaining manhood, of having arrived in life. Of course, richer boys like Vikram and Sabhapur arrived way ahead of them. You need to dress smart to ride a bike, Shazib told Reshma. like Salman Khan and Hrithik Roshan and John Abraham, basically like a Bollywood hunk. They were symbols of tough men who were desired and stood up to bullies, and most of the boys wanted to be like them. The recipe for that included a bike, sunglasses, a pair of jeans, a cell phone, and money in your pocket. So Shahzeb bought 2 pairs of jeans with the desired faded, weathered look. On 15th December 2012, Shahzeb's favorite actor Salman Khan had gifted a Hayabusa bike by the automobile company Suzuki. The Hayabusa is one of the fastest bikes in the world. Salman Khan had a mythic status. I'm going to skip some bit of it. On 16 December 2012, Shahzeb stuck a newspaper cutting with a picture of Salman Khan. The same night, 4 men gang raped a 24-year-old student in a moving bus in Delhi. For an entire month, there were protests. They demanded changes in the Indian rape laws. A week after the gang rape, Bobby, the owner of the shocker repair shop, asked Shahzeb to join him for a bike rally at India Gate. That was the day Shahzeb asked Reshma to buy the bangles. 24 young men left Karawal Nagar at around 7 in the evening. When they reached India Gate 45 minutes later, there were around 20 more bikers waiting for them. Some had posters that read, "Damini deserves justice." They all did several rounds of India Gate yelling, "Delhi police down, down, Damini deserves justice." On their last round, they threw bangles at the Delhi police personnel there. Throwing bangles was a way of saying that Delhi police were not men enough to protect women. So they should wear bangles like women, because for them, being a woman meant being weak. Shahzeb was not bothered by all these deep things. He was riding a Pulsar that had come for a repair that morning. It was a bike that was sold with a tagline, "Definitely male." For him, at this moment, he was as different from his father as possible. He was riding a bike at India Gate, where he had only been twice in all these years of living in Delhi. The ride on a winter night with a chill in the air made him feel invincible, top of the world, desirable, tough. The moment when you taste self-worth for the first time in life. And the chance to humiliate Delhi police publicly made him feel powerful.
Great, very powerful. So thanks a ton. It was great talking to you. And honestly, I'll be waiting for the sequel because very curious to find out finally what happens to Syeda and her family 10 years from now. So thank you, Neha.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Thank you, all of you.